Was it as impressive of a reading month as February? I don't think that's possible, but that doesn't mean it wasn't a good one. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with another monthly wrap-up, this time for the month of March. I'm going to talk about everything that I read in the month and name that old book of the month, which if you watch the weekly updates, I don't think will be a surprise, but just in case you haven't, well, there might be something here that might catch you off guard. So let's begin, like usual, talk about what I read in the month of March. I picked up 5 novels, and I finished them. And the 6th one got the good old DNF, which is very rare on this channel, but I've tried this year. I'm going to try to make sure that I have a quicker trigger on those things than previous years, because last year I forced myself to finish some books that I was not enjoying, and I think it contributed a little bit to that big book burnout that I did have. Let's talk about what I read, what I did complete. I finished Faded by Benedict Jack, and that's book 1 in the Alex Vera series. I was looking to get into some more urban fantasy, and that's kind of the one that I picked to start with, because it always become so highly recommended by Dresden Files fans. I liked it enough to keep going, but not so much where I'm like, oh, I got to get book 2 on the schedule ASAP. Nice setup. I feel like it's going to be undeniably, you're going to see things where you're going to say, hey, that feels very Dresden Files, but I don't feel like it doesn't do enough to stand on its own from Dresden Files. I like that. I like the main character. I like Luna. I'm very interested in the world. Just needed a little bit more, I think, to make me say, I've got to pick up book 2 now. It didn't quite do that, but definitely not a bad book by any regard, and I will be continuing sometime this year. Relic of the Gods, Philip C. Trail. This is actually concluding the Echoes, the first trilogy, which is the Relic trilogy that was within the Echoes saga, the 9-book series. So these are the first series. So we're 1/3 of the way there. This was part of a read-along. Seems like people were mixed to positive on it, and no one really seemed to be hating it or anything. But I think a lot of people, like myself, did appreciate the way the series started much more so than it finished. And this is one of those where, usually I'm saying normalize a trilogy again. That's something I've been very, very big about. But it did feel like it needed more room to breathe with how much Philip tried to do so quick. So I'm interested enough in the universe to keep going. I know it all takes place in that same universe, and it's going to be, decades later. Some of these characters, they aren't working on the same kind of timeline as most humans are, so you might see some of those characters in different series going forward. But I did appreciate the trilogy. I thought it was a really good setup. I do dig the world and everything that he has kind of thrown into it, and I liked it enough to continue. But book 1 was still my favorite of that trilogy. Dead Man's Walk. This is by Larry McMurtry. I've been doing one Larry McMurtry Lonesome Dove book per year in the spring the last 3 years now. And just like the previous ones, it was amazing. It was an amazing read. And I don't think that Larry McMurtry could do anything wrong for me at this point. He just writes characters in a way that no one else really is doing it. Third Rule of Time Travel is by Philip Fracassi. I read Boys in the Valley last year, really liked it a lot. And I said anything he writes going forward, I'll check out. But it wasn't a horror book. It was a sci-fi kind of a techno thriller, if it were, kind of book. And it's very much it feels like a hat tip almost to Michael Crichton's Timeline with a little bit of Blake Crouch thrown in there. And I don't know if that's necessarily what he was going for. That's just the vibes that I got. I think Blake Crouch fans are going to enjoy it quite a bit. And the way that he kind of shows the focus, here's the technological achievement and why we shouldn't be messing with it. But, it goes back to what's going on in the main character's real life and the tragedies that have happened in the past really becomes the focus of the story, much more so than the exciting time travel elements. But I think there's enough there for everybody to enjoy whatever you're into. You're going to find something that you like there. So definitely we'll continue with more Philip Fracassi. I do want to see more horror books of his, so I might have to start going backwards in his bibliography a bit to kind of check out some of those like I've done with some other authors previously. Paper Towns by John Green. This is my jam, guys. High school coming-of-age kind of story. I liked it a lot. There were some things I thought was a little bit, I'm not smart enough once they start getting all the poetry and the Walt Whitman and stuff like that. But just like the 3 main characters, Q, Ben, and Radar, love it. I love that stuff. That's the coming-of-age stuff I'm all about. He writes teenage boys very well. And when you read it, you're going to be like, God, these kids are idiots. Yes, teenage boys are idiots. I don't think this is a controversial thing to say. I think he grabs that really, really well. And how, we will be in love with the idea of someone. And then when you get to know them, you think maybe, yeah, that might not be exactly what it is. I don't know if that's necessarily the theme of the story. I think the theme of the story really is, hey, let's talk to each other. Let's communicate a little bit. But I really appreciated this. It was my first John Green book. Got to go to the signing in March. It was a really intelligent guy. I'm very interested in reading more from him, even though it does seem like he's starting to lean more into nonfiction stuff, and that's cool. That's not my jam, but I don't think I'll ever do the Fault in Our Stars. But something Alaska, I forget what it's called now. I think that's going to be the next one that I try from John Green. But I definitely want to check out more of it. And maybe try some of these crash course videos he does that my wife seems to love so much. And then my DNF guys, Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones, got almost to the 50% mark. And I just said, it's just not for me. Look, I think he's a talented writer. Like, I can read what he's writing here and say, yeah, he knows what he's doing. He has a style. I just don't know if that's a style for me. Said it kind of almost felt like Inception. You had a person reading the recount of a person telling them a story that might be from a third person. It goes like 3 layers deep in the storytelling here. And I don't know if it needed that framing narrative. It could have just been a period piece instead of like these found diaries kind of thing. I don't know if it's kind of like his hat tip to Dracula or what. Something about it it was never really grabbing me. I wasn't really interested. And again, I don't want to say that I'll never try Stephen Graham Jones again. I will be reading I Was a Teenage Slasher. I already promised I will be doing that one. A lot of people have said Only Good Indians, but it seems to be way more divisive than even this book is. But it just didn't click for me, and I think it might be the writing style. I can't really explain what it is, but I want people to understand. I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to pick up this book and decide for yourself, because I seem to be on an island with this one. Lots of people are saying it's their favorite Stephen Graham Jones book. So please, if you're a fan, obviously you're not going to listen to me. You're going to read it anyway, and I think you might enjoy it. But it's something for me. It didn't really work, and I just said, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and call it quits, because everyone was saying that like the beginning and the end are the best parts, and the middle part was the kind of slower stuff, and I was like, I'm having a hard time getting into it, and this part that you're saying is really, really good. So it might just be his writing style or the framing narrative that he just chose to use. It just was not for me. So I said, let's just go ahead and say we gave it a good old try, and I will be trying more Stephen Graham Jones. So do not worry if that is something you are afraid of. So how about that book of the month? I think you can kind of listen to these and tell which one I had the most enthusiasm about. But I had a lot of people saying that they thought that I was like having a reading slump or something because I quit the Stephen Graham Jones book. No, it's just like I said at the beginning of the year. I'm not going to force my, like, guys, I finished The Toll last year, which was a complete misery. And I said, I'm not going to do that to myself again. So I just went ahead and said, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pull the plug on it. But I had a good reading month. It wasn't as good as February, but again, I think I've got 2 books in February that are going to be on my I don't see myself reading 10 more books better than the 2 that I picked from last month. If I do, I'm going to have an all-time reading year. So I'm still having a great time. I'm not burned out on anything. Yes, I made that video saying I was disillusioned with fantasy, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But that didn't mean that I'm burned out on reading. I don't know where that theory has come from, but that is definitely not the case. As for my book of the month for the month of March, I don't think it'll surprise anyone when I tell you it's going to be Dead Man's Walk by Larry McMurtry, ℓ𝕤𝕤 del Muerto. I love this. I mean, it's not shocking to anyone who listened to me talk about Streets of Laredo, listened to me talk about Lonesome Dove, that I was going to love this. It's not a surprise. Yes, we're going to the prequel, and the prequel always kind of worries me because I'm usually like, yeah, well, I know my protagonists are safe, but you know what Larry does? He's really good at this thing called writing characters, and he introduces a bunch of new characters. And even though up here you're saying, oh, okay, well, I know what Larry's doing here. Don't get attached to any of these characters. It's impossible. He's going to get you attached to his characters because he just writes them so realistic, so relatable in a way that you're going to love them. And when the inevitable bad thing happens, you're destroyed. And I think what this book really shows is how Gus and Cole have become quite so jaded as they are when you meet them in Lonesome Dove. Because they do like a lot of kids did with Vietnam. They said, hey, my dad did this thing called World War II, said it was the greatest thing ever. And then when they got to Vietnam, they realized it's not quite what I thought it was going to be. Kind of similar with this. They think joining the Texas Rangers is going to be this great adventure. It's going to be a thrill of a lifetime. And then they see some really bad things happening at the very beginning. They're like, my God, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And they spend the rest of the novel basically, shitting their pants. And it's awful because he writes brutalism of this time period so believable. I mean, only equivalent I could think of is like Ken Follett, who writes the time period just like so real that you feel like you're there. You feel like you're crawling around the desert with these guys as they're going on this walk. And it's brilliant. It's just brilliant. And I went ahead and said, okay, I've read 3 books now. I've got enough data to say, this is the greatest character writer I've ever read in my life. And I say that as a Stephen King fan. And I never thought anyone could touch Stephen King when it comes to writing characters. But damn it if Larry is not a damn wizard at it. He is incredible, and I'm not going to lie to you guys. I am very distraught that I only have one Lonesome Dove book left. One more ride with these characters. And then it's time to check out some other Mercer stuff. I think Lady Picture Show is the one that I'm going to go with next because it sounds like it's got Larry doing some coming of age. And obviously, I don't think that anyone's going to be able to possibly do it any better. So, not a surprise. To me, it's my third favorite Lonesome Dove book, but that's because they've all been amazing and something's got to go there. Didn't like it as much as Lonesome Dove. Obviously, I don't think that's possible. And Streets of Laredo, I just loved almost as much as Lonesome Dove. This one, not as much, but absolutely. It is a 5-star book. It is an S-tier book. It's amazing. Larry can do no wrong for me so far, and I can't wait to pick up more out of his library. So, Dead Man's Walk, guys, book of the month for March. Surprising, absolutely no one. How about some of my most popular content for the month? Well, I put out 13 videos in the month and 2 in case you missed it vids. Some of the big ones here. Let's talk about the top 5. My current bookish disillusionment. As of recording this, is 38,000 views. That obviously was me talking about how I think modern fantasy isn't really cutting it. It's something that I've been kind of thinking of for a while and putting off. It's like, why am I having burnout, or are these series just not that great? And what it is like, I'm not saying these series are bad, because people want me to list, hey, list the series that you think are bad. That's not what I meant. I was just saying that there's certain things they're doing that make it feel formulaic. And when you read it, and 5 minutes later you forget about it. Because it's like not leaving a lasting impression on you. It's having no cultural impact on me personally. And I'm not accusing anyone of using AI. I don't understand. What I'm saying, it feels like they go to AI and say, give me the 3-act structure and all the beats I need to hit in my book. And it feels like one of those, like, you know how you go to a MCU movie after a while and you're like, hey, I know when to go pee because I know the structure of these movies? It's kind of how it feels with some of these books. Oh, well, who cares if I skip a chapter? I know what's going to happen. It's kind of gotten to the point to where I felt about it. And I talked about the things that I'm not really digging in there in modern fantasy. And it really, my bookish disillusionment, I'm going to come up with like the positive side of it. I didn't really think it was negative. I think it's okay to talk about these things that aren't jiving for us without it being, considered negative, constructive criticism. And these are always going to be things that are personal. This is how you're feeling. These are always going to be subjective. So with me, there's lots of things with modern fantasy that aren't cutting it, and that's just kind of what I talked about there. And it feels like I'm not alone. I got a lot of people in there that are like, literally every story ever has social commentary. I mean, I disagree, and I think that's a very unhappy way to read because you're going to be jumping at ghosts. You're going to be, if you're looking for it, you're going to find it no matter what it is. To me, I feel like when it's heavy-handed, that's the stuff that really just drives me crazy. You take me out of my escapism. That's not why I read fantasy. I read fantasy to escape from the real world. I don't need the real world brought into my fantasy. And that's just things in modern fantasy that are very popular. They're selling a lot of books. They're very, very popular authors. And it's why I said I'm going to start leaning into some classic fantasy again, looking at some self-published fantasy, some independent authors, because those stories I want are still out there. And I'm not too proud to admit, the genre might be passing me by. As a 46-year-old man, it might be passing me by. I always feel like these things, they kind of go back and forth. It's a pendulum. It goes one way and comes back. Every generation we get this time where the people say, oh, fantasy is dying for a certain demographic, and it always swings back. And I expect it'll swing back. Just don't know if it'll happen before I'm too old to be reading anymore. My eyes don't work anymore. Maybe I'll have to learn how to use audiobooks like you guys. I don't know. But that was my most popular video going away, and it's not really a surprise. Most recommended series, books, and authors from viewers. I want to kind of focus on what I get in the comments to show you guys. I do read your comments. I read all of them. I might not have time to respond to all of them anymore, but I do read all of them. That's at 22,000 views. Obviously, lots of series in there. People were taking it more as like, these are series I want to start. No, I'm going to be doing that video soon. It was just, these are the ones that get recommended to me the most. And yeah, in the end, I want to make my audience happy. I want to talk about the things you guys want me to read. I have no problems doing that. And just kind of let you know, I do hear you. And these are the ones I get recommended a lot. And I talk about if I think I'm going to be trying them. Are they in the plans immediately? Are they in the long-term plans? All those things. But lots of interesting series and lots of good feedback from you guys. But if you're wanting me to say, hey, these are series I'm thinking about starting soon, I'll be doing that video here very, very soon. I do that in April of every year, and that's a video that'll be coming soon, so look out for that one. Underrated Stephen King reads, 14,000 views. I just hadn't done a Stephen King video in a while, and the thing was I had planned on doing a basically why TikTok book talk thing didn't work for me, and I felt like the video was really, really negative. And I was like, I know a lot of really great people who have succeeded on the TikTok platform. I don't want to. I feel like I'm blasting those people, so I decided not to do that. My audible was to go to, and that's a sports term, not the. I know there's a lot of people on here who aren't sports fans, so when I say I'm calling an audible, that's a sports term, an NFL term for we're changing the play at the last second. I've got lots of people being like, what are you talking about Audible? You talking about like the audiobook? No, calling on Audible. So I did my backup plan, which was, what do I do when I run out of ideas or I need to come up with something on the fly? Well, I go back to the well, and the well is Stephen King, and talked about some underrated Stephen King books. Now, these are some books like, it's not nothing you haven't ever heard of. I don't think Stephen King can have a book that people haven't heard of. I mean, he's just way too popular of an author. He's too much ingrained in our pop culture for that to happen. But I think these are ones that even constant readers, they don't, you always see it like the bottom third of their reads and stuff. And books, I think they're really, really good. And either people haven't given it a try, or they just haven't, or they don't really know about them, or they've just kind of gotten forgotten about. And so there's some on there that you feel like that's not underrated at all. I mean, it might not. To me, these are the ones I feel like don't get talked about enough. And yeah, there are lots of good feedback in there, and lots of people throwing in some that even I haven't read. I haven't read Joyland yet, so that's why that one wasn't on there. And at this point, I felt like, hey, I missed it. I might as well just go ahead while I'm doing Into the Multiverse, which is starting back up soon, and I'll make sure that I get to it on the publication order when I do get there. Urban fantasy that I am excited for, 14,000 views. Right after I did the what I'm disillusioned with modern fantasy, I thought, how about I really dip into some urban fantasy? Because one, they're shorter. They're always shorter books. There's less world building. There's less characters. It's easier to digest, I think. Now, that's not a blanket statement. I know some urban fantasy is not quite like that. Like, I would have never thought *Dresden Files* had the world building that it did. When you read book one, you would have never thought that it kind of exploded the way that it did into that humongous world. And I think that's something that urban fantasy's really good at. It doesn't feel like it needs to throw everything to you at once. You don't feel like you're having to go to a class to learn, history class, to learn about this world first. And I think that's great. That's something that I felt like I love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I love Dresden Files. I love Hellblazer. I love Angel. Why am I not more interested in urban fantasy? So I just kind of wanted to get some series on my radar. I already picked up a couple from that list and just talk about what I'm really excited to try. I really do think that there's some that I got some feedback on that I've said, okay, maybe not so much for me. Like, I don't think Anita Blake's going to be my jam based off the feedback that I heard. If you guys love Anita Blake, don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, as a 46-year-old male, I don't know if necessarily that's going to be something I'm really interested to. But, there's some series you guys recommended, like Rivers of London, which sound exactly like something that I would be looking for. So it's always good. I'm a rookie, guys, when it comes to urban fantasy. Again, Buffy and Angel, John Constantine, Hellblazer, and Dresden Files. That's really my knowledge of the urban fantasy genre. If you don't count like Harry Potter, I don't know. But anyway, I'm excited to try some of those series, and I got lots of great recommendations and feedback, so thank you guys so much. And then fantasy for readers that hate magic. That is at 9,000 views. That was one I thought was going to be better, but then it turns out, I'm thinking about it, yeah, you guys do like magic. That's why you read fantasy. So I understand. Really, it was kind of more of like, you don't like magic being a main character. I think I should have probably, people who, don't like hard magic, I probably should have used some kind of different naming mechanism or something for that, or a different focus. Because I talk about series that have no magic, very little magic, or soft magic in there. So there's some magic. It's hard actually to find fantasy books that have absolutely zero magic, because then you just kind of lean into historical fiction, which I do have some on there. But it's a video that it seems like it's starting to trend up, that people were getting more interested in it than they did when it first came out. And that's cool. I love a video that's evergreen outside of just, the first 48 hours it does really well, and then no one ever watches it again. But I'm sick of crazy big magic systems. I don't need the magic system to be a character in my story. And that's just kind of what I wanted to share there. But I might actually do one for, readers who love magic. I don't know. I feel like you guys know those books already. But that's one of the ones that did the best for the month of March. And thank you guys so much for any minute that you watch of my videos. I am very, very grateful for. As for goals for April, got a couple of things here. Just kind of try to get life back to normal. If you missed it, I had a medical thing, and I had to get it taken care of, and it really just sapped me. Been on meds for a month after. We're coming up on 4 weeks, 4 weeks of antibiotics, which have just really just wrecked my energy level. It makes you feel nauseous. It drains all your energy. And it's hard to get in front of a camera when you feel like that. So it's been very hard. I've actually gotten more reading in, which is cool. That's why I've gotten up to almost 6 books a month now, or 5.5, you know, if you count a DNF. But I think that hopefully now that that's coming to an end, I can get back to normal with my schedule. And that'll mean more content here coming up. And that means I want to try new stuff. Try talking about urban fantasy. Try lit RPG. You know, I'm reading Dungeon Crawler Carl right now, just based off of you guys' feedback. And I want to make sure that I try doing some kind of off-the-cuff kind of vids, like I did with the Bookish Disillusionment or the underrated Stephen King, stuff that doesn't feel so planned out, because it feels like sometimes when I do the off-the-cuff videos, they're the ones that you guys are the most interested in. So I don't try to do a ton of like vlog format stuff, because I do the weekly update every week. I try not to do that when I'm just like, you know, just talking, you know. I try to have some kind of structure before I go in. I don't use a teleprompter or anything like that. I use bullet points, but I don't know. Maybe just keep experimenting. That's something I'm going to keep trying to do, because you guys did like a couple of the videos this month that I did not think that you'd be too into, and keep on experimenting with those things. But that was the month of March, guys. I would love to know how the month went for you. What was your favorite book? What was your book of the month? What was your least favorite book? These things are all fun to talk about down below. Did you read any of these? Did you finish Buffalo Hunter x Hunter? Am I crazy? Probably. So drop in the comments, guys, and let me know, and I will talk to you there.